Evening, everybody, and welcome again this Friday to our talk. Uh, like I say, we are talking from the platform of She Chooses to Live, which is an organization that believes in giving people knowledge so that they make the right choices, or at least reasonable choices, and also physically doing things like examinations on those underprivileged people so that they can access what most Princess Diana's access, and those people in the slums cannot. So She Chooses to Live believes that at some point when COVID is over, we shall be able to be going to the slums and checking women, matters reproductive health, and even performing pap smears or other screenings on them so that they will be helped where they can't, in things that can be prevented. So that's She Chooses to Live. Now, on my left here is my tech guy. She's also in the team of She Chooses to Live. She's called Marion Wakahe, very passionate about letting people know. You can imagine she's a marketer, so she markets knowledge. Uh, I am Dr. Jane Wakahe, obstetrician gynecologist, and also with an arm in public health, with a degree in public health. And the public health is what has kind of pushed me to teach people gynecology and to teach people obstetrics so that people are not ignorant. I found in the course of my work a lot of lack of knowledge about many things that look normal to us doctors, and yet the questions I get asked sometimes you feel very, very saddened because you expect somebody knows that, but they really, really sincerely don't. So that's what She Chooses to Live is all about, and we employees of She Chooses to Live, we have been mandated or told or commanded to give knowledge, and we enjoy giving knowledge. So here goes. We've been talking many things, matters reproductive health. Much of the time we discuss what you people have requested that we discuss, and that is the way it is going to go on forwards. So kindly, whatever you feel you want discussed, just post it, and then we shall discuss it in the due course of time. So this week, we are discussing a very nice topic. It will be short today, very, very nice and short, because it's to do with pregnancy, and I love pregnancies. So we're going to discuss how you know that you're pregnant. We are going to talk about the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. And when we talk the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, we count from the day that the one had their last period. So the first day of the last period is the beginning of the pregnancy, the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. Then about 14 days before the next period, one gets to, if an egg is fertilized, one gets to have it implanted. So let's start. First day of the period, some people will ovulate on day 7, some people ovulate on day 14, some people ovulate even up to day 21, and that is still normal. Maybe at some point we shall talk about the fertility window. But once the ovulation, the egg has come out, and when it is fertilized, then it takes about 14 days from the tube where it is fertilized to go and plant in the mother. And in those 14 days, it is traveling through the tube, and hence why sometimes one gets ectopic pregnancy if the fertilized egg doesn't reach the womb properly. So at about the time that one is expecting their next period, which is about 14 days after ovulation, then that's when the baby is implanting into the mother. And this time comes the first sign. The first sign is that you feel like your period is coming. In fact, a lot of people will wear a pad at that time, waiting for the period to come. Only the period does not come, or if the period comes, it is very, very slight, not the kind of periods that one is used to. So cramping, like a period is coming, is the first sign that you are pregnant if the period doesn't properly come. That is the first sign. Then hence it means that then you will miss your period. So missed period, and the first sign is that one is expecting a period which is not really appearing. After after that first sign, then the implantation happens. What the cramping is because the baby is, to put it in a funny way, is like a digger digging into the wall of the uterus, and sometimes the little bleeding is because it can dig through a blood vessel as it digs to get into the mother and to lodge into the mother. So that's why it feels like cramping, like a period is coming, and why sometimes a little period comes, but it's not a pronounced period. So when that little one digs into the wall of the mother, the endometrium, the endometrial lining, the one we talked about the other day, that is the one that waits for the baby. Once the baby digs into that endometrium and gets settled in there, then it starts to produce some hormones that it sends into the mother's bloodstream. And when that happens, that's what causes all the other signs that one feels uh, as if they are pregnant. Now, alongside with the hormones that the baby produces, the ovary that gave the egg to become a baby also produces some hormones. So there is an elevation of hormones both from the ovary and from the baby. Now, the combination of these bring about a few things. One of the first things that a pregnant woman, an early pregnant woman will sense is a sense of smell, a very heightened sense of smell. So things that were not smelling before, things that she couldn't pick, she starts to pick. And in this regard, the one that gets the biggest culprit is the husband's cologne or the partner's cologne. A cologne that sometimes some women have bought, but now suddenly that cologne smells very, very, very bad. So one of them is the heightened sense of smell that tells you that you're pregnant. The second one is a very funny taste in the mouth, as if it's bitter, as if it is metallic, a very, very funny taste in the mouth. And sometimes you need to keep eating something. A lot of newly pregnant women start eating gum to try and remove that funny taste from the mouth. So that's another one. The other sign is nausea. Nausea, sometimes vomiting even. And some people really can get very, very nauseated. So you'll find them spitting. Some come with tins to spit into. Some come to the clinic with tissue to spit into. And they're spitting. They just can't swallow their saliva. They are so nauseated. And then sometimes they vomit. So it's not even unusual for a woman to lose weight the first 12 weeks of pregnancy because they are not really being able to eat. They are being very, very nauseated and they can be vomiting. Now, there is an amount of nausea, vomiting, that you must see the doctor about. If there is nothing you are retaining whatsoever, you are vomiting, you are getting dehydrated, which is a term we call hyperemesis gravidarum, that is vomiting of pregnancy, then you need to see a doctor because the more you vomit, the more concentrated, the more dehydrated you become, and hence the more concentrated the hormones of the baby become, and hence the more you vomit. So it's a vicious cycle. If you over vomit, you will actually keep vomiting and you will not be able to stop. So sometimes we see the doctor, and then the doctor gives you some fluid into the system and dilutes and stops the dehydration, hydrates you back, and then the nausea and the vomiting goes a bit down. So if you are over vomiting and not being able to retain anything, you are getting to the point of dehydration, kindly go and see the doctor. Having said that, even if you vomit, eat again, because there is you never remove everything from the stomach. So you eat, you vomit, and you eat again, and you vomit again. So as long as you're not dehydrated, that should be able to suffice. Next, something is a headache. Some women in early pregnancy will get headaches, very, very nasty headaches indeed. They'll even wake up with a headache. And the reason for this is that, it could be headache, could be many other things. It could be a flu, it could be high blood pressure, it could be many things. But in pregnancy specifically, the headache is usually due to hunger. If the brain goes hungry, the brain and the baby use up neatly eaten sugar. They don't use stored sugar. So there's a competition between baby and the brain as to who will get the sugar that has just been eaten. And sometimes the baby wins, so that you get a headache. So if you have a headache when you are pregnant, and you know you're pregnant and you're having a headache, before you swallow that Panadol, please take something that has quite a bit of sugar and see if that will ease the headache. Don't start with Panadol. But if, of course, it persists, then you find out whether it's just a headache of pregnancy or it's a headache of something else, some other underlying reason. Coming a bit lower, we get to the breast, which become very, very tender, very painful. In fact, painful to touch, so that you see in early pregnancy, people will guard their chests with all their heart because they don't want anybody to rub anything against them. As well as being painful and tender, they feel engorged, they feel heavy. And then there is darkening. They start to darken where the nipple is. They start to darken around the nipple, an area we call areola. They get darker, and then they do things like goose pimples on that areola area. So that is a sign that one is pregnant. The other sign is being sleepy and lazy. I can't say how many times husbands have really complained about their wives in my clinic, about she was very, very active. Now she is so lazy. I don't know what's wrong with her. And what's wrong with her is that she's just been made into a container for the baby. She's being slowed down by the hormones so that she doesn't become overactive and lose the baby. So it is natural to be slowed down. It's natural to be sleepy. In fact, if a woman is pregnant and you're talking with them, don't be surprised if you start seeing them sleepy and nodding and losing the track of the talk, because they are actually, their hormones are such that they are making them very, very sleepy indeed and very lazy. So that you see something on the floor and you start debating whether you really are going to pick it or not. That kind of laziness. And you are usually a very meticulous person, very clean, and suddenly you see something dirty and it can't stay. The other sign is forgetfulness, and this almost runs across the whole of throughout the pregnancy. Again, these are hormones that slow the brain down so that it doesn't overwork. So there is a forgetfulness. And what I advise ladies to do is, as soon as you know you're pregnant, please buy a diary and write everything, and write it immediately you think about it, because the next minute you're going to wonder what you thought about. If you want to ask any questions to the doctor when you next visit them, the minute you think of it, kindly write it in the diary. And sometimes I see people scrolling in their phones trying to find where they wrote what. That's why I say a diary, because then a diary you can always see which page. You can always open all the kinds of pages and see which one. So get a diary and write up all the kind of important things, including where you kept your salt and where you kept your watch and where you kept what. Because you'll see pregnant women holding the key to the car, and then they are really looking for it. That is pregnancy for you. The only other time that happens is around menopause, but this is pregnancy. This is a young person. Now, when we go a little bit lower, we come to the stomach, and we get something called bloating. You get gas, you get bloating, so that when you're pregnant, you are burping, you're belching up, you're passing flatus, and the tummy is still bloated. And there's a reason to this, is that the intestines have been slowed down so as not to irritate the uterus and make the uterus want to contract. Many of you who have had children and maybe had induction, you remember that if you are being induced, sometimes we give you what is called enema, which makes the intestines really run and irritate the uterus, and the uterus will sometimes want to go into labor. So in pregnancy, in natural way, the intestines are slowed down, so you get bloating, you get gas. A lot of bloating, so much so that in fact people think that there is a pregnancy showing before 12 weeks, and what is showing is really just gut, not the baby. The baby is still so small to be able to be seen. So not only do you get bloated, not only do you pass a lot of gas, both in both directions, you also get quite a bit of constipation. A lot of constipation in pregnancy, both in early pregnancy and even in later pregnancy. So constipation is something you have to really try to fight in pregnancy, by eating a lot of roughage, by drinking a lot of water, because you have to load the intestines with something to have them move, because they're actually slowed down by the system so that they don't irritate the uterus. Now, the next something is lack of appetite. Either it goes two ways, this one. You can lose appetite, or you can increase appetite. Some people will just not stop eating when they are pregnant. Some people will lose appetite. And many a time, some people will crave things, funny things, very interesting things. They'll crave things that they've never eaten before, and they'll eat it for 2 days, and then it is not good, and they'll crave something else, and again, it is not good. Or they'll crave smells, like I know a woman who used to crave the smell of Harpic for the toilet, and she just wouldn't stop putting Harpic in the toilet because it was smelling so very good. So it is a craving. Now, one craving I want to talk about, which is not normal, is the craving to eat soil or to eat stones. That is not a good craving. That usually tells you that your blood level is a bit low. So if you're pregnant and you're craving, it rains and you really want to eat that soil, have your blood level checked so that it is confirmed that you're really just craving soil, and it's not that your iron is down. When somebody's blood level is down, they want to eat soil, they want to eat stone. So that's not a normal craving. But if you are craving crisps, if you are craving biscuits, if you are craving rice, those are sort of normal cravings. But even as you are craving, kindly eat a balanced diet, because your baby needs a balanced diet. Now, the other thing is what people tell me, feeling malaria or feeling hot. When you do become pregnant, your body temperature actually goes up, and it will stay higher, like a degree or two higher than normal, than when it was when you were not pregnant. So it will be a higher temperature. And even other people would notice that you have a high temperature. So people think they have malaria because of this high temperature. Now, the danger of this is that because one is feeling so very hot, then if it is cold, they may dress inadequately because they are feeling hot. So what we advise people is look at the people around you and dress the way they are dressed. If it's a cold day, don't feel hot and refuse to dress, because then you can still get exposed to pneumonias. Just dress heavy even if you are feeling very hot. So do not take malaria tablets. Before you take malaria tablets, kindly test that you're not pregnant. Just go and confirm that you're not pregnant before you take malaria tablets. And this is if you've missed your period and most of the other signs are there. Now, another thing that happens is that there is frequency of urination, so that where you could hold urine for 2 hours, for a whole day, sometimes half a day, now you keep wanting to go to pass urine. And the reason for this is that the uterus is enlarging. It occupies space in what is the pelvis, and that's where the bladder is found. And they are very close to each other. So when the uterus enlarges, the bladder is not able to fill up to capacity because it's being pushed by the bladder. And hence, you keep going to pass urine many times, what we call frequency. Now, this frequency is not to be confused with another frequency of infection. This frequency, you just pass urine and you're at peace. The other one of infection is that when you're passing urine, it is also painful. And it may not be painful at the beginning. It is that maybe at the very end, when you finish urinating, there's a bit of pain, a bit of pain. So if there is pain, that is not to do with pregnancy. The pregnancy, there is no pain. You just have to empty because the bladder is not being allowed to fill up to its full capacity. So that's frequency that happens when you are pregnant. Now, the next thing that changes is the skin. Fortunately, a lot of pregnant women, their skins glow. They get very bright because the blood volume in the system goes a bit up, and even the hormones make somebody glow. That's a lot of women, but a few. They get a lot of acne, they get funny darkenings, they get very funny skin rashes, a few. So you can go either way. If you're lucky, you will go very smooth and glowing skin. If you are not so lucky, you'll go acne and rashes. But this has, by the way, nothing to do with what gender you are carrying inside. It's not to do with the hormones that the baby is. I mean, it's not to do with which baby, is it a boy or a girl, that your skin is changing in whichever way. No, that has nothing really to do with it. So those are the signs of early pregnancy, the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. That's how you know you are pregnant. These signs do not all have to happen. Some people have some. Some people will get scot-free and not get nauseated. And some people will be very nauseated. Some people, the smells will be manageable. Some people, the taste will not be so bad. And some people will not vomit. So it's not everybody that will get every sign of these signs, but some of them will definitely happen. Now, let's see what is happening to the baby in the first 12 weeks of life. Starting at the time of fertilization. And this is where it becomes exciting, the miracles of God. We are talking about one cell that is an egg from the woman, and one cell that is a sperm from the man. Now, these two cells, you cannot even see them with your naked eye. They are seen microscopically, so they are not visible to you. They are that little. And then these very little cells, they join up and become one. And those two cells, now, if it is the woman's egg is always what is an X. The man's cell can be either an X or a Y. He produces both types of sperm, an X or a Y. Now, if the woman's egg is fertilized by an X sperm, then it will become a girl. If the woman's egg is fertilized by a Y sperm, then it will become a boy. So whichever of them it is, they are. Then they start dividing themselves very, very rapidly, those two eggs. And hence why sometimes you are very, very hungry, because although it is very, very tiny, it is using a lot of energy in your it's using a lot of energy of what you have eaten. So it is multiplying itself so hard, so that by about week 6, what was just 2 cells, week 6 from the last period, the beginning of the last period, what was just 2 cells now has a heartbeat. It has become an embryo with a heartbeat. Now, the baby makes 3 things. It makes 3 systems. Those 2 cells now make 3 systems. They make the baby itself. Then they make the accommodation, and then they make the support system. Now the baby will divide into all its organs, and about 8.5 weeks to 9 weeks, the baby has every organ that it'll ever have. And hence why we advise very, very strongly in the first 12 or so weeks of life of pregnancy, do not take all kinds of medicines. Kindly refrain from taking all kinds of medicines. And if you must take medicine, tell your doctor that you have missed your period. Because this is a very, very tricky time. It's the time when the baby is organizing its legs, it's organizing its arms, it's organizing its liver. And if you take funny medicines that can go and interfere with that organization, then the baby will have congenital malformations. So the first weeks of pregnancy are very vital. Do not take any medicines. Do not use any chemicals. Try to avoid all kinds of chemicals wherever you can. Try to avoid, because then you can really, really damage that baby. And it's a very, very delicate baby at that time. So it is forming itself. And that's the same time when you want to avoid people with all kinds of flus, because that's when the infections, viral infections, can actually also damage this baby. So you want to avoid people with all kinds of infections if you can. Now, the state of pregnancy is such that your immunity is taken down. You have very, very low immunity indeed in pregnancy. And the reason for this is that you are carrying a baby who is not you. The baby you are carrying is partly you and partly the father. And because of the material, the tissues, the material from the father, if your immunity was allowed to stay at par, you would reject this baby, because it is a foreign body in your system. It's not you. And our bodies are made such we want to reject any foreign bodies. So you are not only is your immunity very low, so you are going to catch all kinds of flus that are walking around your system. But also, those flus can damage the same baby who is trying to be formed and cause congenital malformation. So, if you can, you can't always know. And sometimes you get a flu and you don't even know that you got it. And don't ever blame yourself if a baby comes with congenital malformations. But if you can, avoid all kinds of areas where you are likely to get an infection, especially a viral infection. So the baby is forming itself as a whole. It's formed all its organs. And by week about 10, all the organs do is they start to grow bigger. It's a whole person. It stops being what is now called an embryo to a real baby who is called a fetus. The baby also is forming accommodation. That is, it is forming its swimming pool. A baby lives in a bag full of water and floats in that water the whole time until the baby is being born. And if the water breaks and it is then the baby is exposed to all kinds of infections. So one hopes that the bag of water will stay intact, and sometimes babies are lost just because the water got broken. So the baby forms its own water, and that water is very interesting water, because the baby will drink it, and the baby will urinate in it, and then the mother will take the water to it herself, and then clean it, and then give it back to the baby. And that is the third thing that the baby forms, which is called the support system. And the support system is the placenta and the cord. So in the first 12 weeks, baby is very, very busy forming itself, forming a swimming pool, and forming a placenta that will support it, to give it oxygen, to give it food, to give it all the nutrients that it will need throughout pregnancy. And then the placenta is a very vital thing. It has to stay attached to the mother. The first 12 weeks, the help is being, the placenta is being assisted to stay feeding the baby by the mother ovary, the ovary that gave the egg that became the baby. But after about 12 to 14 weeks, then the baby has formed its own support system, and it's actually very self-supporting, and it then will continue to self-support. So that's what is the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. There are some tests that one needs to do in the first weeks of pregnancy. There is one which is called an anomaly check, which we do between week 11 and 12, and that is to check that the baby's organs have actually formed well. If one is older, much older age, when we worry about the chromosomal abnormalities, then we'll do many more intensive tests. But if one is just in the nicely reproductive age, then one will just do an ultrasound to confirm that the baby has formed all its organs and formed them well. Now, when the baby's support system takes over, now the baby is an independent person, getting the food from the mother through the placenta and taking it to the baby through the cord, and the baby feeding, and then the baby taking the water back. Now, the one thing that a baby is not allowed to do inside is to pass stool, because a baby will only pass stool if they are not having enough oxygen in their system, and that then the sphincters, the sphincters of the anus will open if they don't have enough oxygen. But they are allowed to urinate. In fact, they drink that water and they urinate, and it is possible to actually see a baby's bladder inside the mother's uterus, because the bladder would be full of urine. So, what have I talked this day? That the first 12 weeks of pregnancy are very, very vital to the well-being of the baby. They form actually what the baby will become, how clever they will become, how well formed they will become. That is actually almost determined the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, because that's the first, between week 7 and week 12, the baby is very, very busy forming its brain. And this is a time you need to really have good nutrition to feed the baby properly. Now, today is not a nutrition day. I was just giving you the signs of early pregnancy, and I think I'll stop there. Early pregnancy, do not overexert yourself. Do not smoke. Do not drink. Do not take medicines of your ovule. Do not do chemicals. In fact, I tell women not to retouch their hair with the palm, because that palm can go through the skin and go to the baby. So that's all. I said today is a short one, and the baby is not is by week 12. The baby, you cannot see a tummy of the mother and say that's a pregnancy. If you are seeing, what you're seeing is the intestine is bloated. The baby is still within the pelvis and below the pubic bone by week 12. They start to lift out into the abdomen by week 14, and the tummy starts to show at about week 18. So those are the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. I'll now call my tech guy to come and see if there are any questions that we want to answer today. Today was a short one. It's a lovely one. It's pregnancy. It always excites me. Tech guy. Tech guy. Today was a short one. There was a little one. It was to do with pregnancy, nothing very complicated, just the signs of pregnancy.
No comments.
No comments. Okay. Everybody understood.
I think so.
Okay. Okay. No, except to say go and get pregnant. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, so Betty just says short but very informative.
Yeah, today it was a short one.
And 36 minutes. So log out.
We can log out, yes. If there are no comments, no questions, we can log out. They can always ask questions later and we shall answer them.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
So bye.